would have kept that door open till 11:30
Thank you.
because you were not going to escape tonight. What happened to Johnny?
He's still downstairs.
He's supposed to be there till 8:05.
I see. Hopefully one of those 28th Street sharks didn't devour him. You know how they are. We don't have a minion.
Women don't count.
Even worse then. Half a minion. Is that camera working? Is it recording right now?
Not right now. It only has 2 hours, so
You're going to wait for the best 2
wait
hours.
for the good stuff.
Maybe I'll get hot at 8:30 and do 8:30 to 10:30. Have that doors. DJ 40 or something. What became of your life? All that study, all that research, a doorman. What happened to you? Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
Let me begin by asking you, Mark, what have you been working on since the last meeting?
Since the last meeting?
The last meeting?
Is that what you said? Since the last meeting?
Yes, the last meeting. Or even before that.
Been working on could answer a couple of things since the last Thursday meeting or since the last meeting with you.
What have you been working on lately?
Been working on thinking about what I'm doing right this moment. Imagining how the last hour has been and if I would change anything. And trying to think about the next hour and make it the best I can make it. Be as present as I can be.
What do I find a little mushy about what you're saying?
Best might be one of those things.
Best might be. It's not the one I had in mind.
I don't know. Tell me.
Can anybody else jump in with an opinion of? You usually have an opinion.
What struck me was working on thinking about something.
He's going to go far. Further than Brooklyn. You're going to get all the way to Baltimore. Believe me. Yeah. He's thinking about something really getting your hands dirty and working in there with the slime that is the mind.
No, thinking about something is imagining it.
You use both words so we wouldn't get left out. Yes. What prevents you from jumping in and observing what that mind is doing and pushing it in the direction it should be pushed?
The main thing that prevents me is that I forget myself, that I get caught up in what I'm doing, in the action of it, thinking that I know what I'm doing.
And do you accept that excuse as something real?
Do I accept that truth as something?
That excuse?
No, I accept it as part of most people's lives. And part of my life often. Is it real?
It is what?
I said, is it real? Posing the question, your question. No. It is as imaginary as thinking about working.
Yes. I forget with who it was recently, this week. We had a discussion on what work is. Now I remember. What work is, what it could be, what it should be, the things that one may have to give. We spoke about the issues surrounding work, which is really a dance. Work is essential. Work demands the best of you. Work is this, and you have to put aside. But then I had to ask, what are you working on? And then there was a little bit more of a dance. Then nothing happened. Because a great pastime is thinking about work, discussing work, realizing that we need work, realizing that without it, things are very bad. But I would like to think that we got there the first week, 6 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago. Now, what are you working on? I'm working on the fact that I tell lies. Okay, that's a specific task. Why are you working on telling lies? Because I don't want to be a liar? It fools me, it fools others. Okay. What are you doing to get over the illness of lying? I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. And what did you... Now we have a conversation going on somebody who is working on changing the way they behave. 5 little words. Changing the way we behave. Not thinking about what's the best thing for us, what's the best thing for mankind, why we're not making progress. What are we changing? Now tell me about that, so I can have my coffee while you talk. Is this the Dave Letterman show? You always go. I'm so glad to see you.
Thank you, Bill.
I haven't seen you in here in, 35, 40 years.
No, I was here in 1987.
1997. That's fairly recent. I remember.
It was 1,000 years ago. Although I feel like I've been here for 1,000 years.
You're pushing. When somebody has been here 1,000 years, then they don't have to pay any more dues.
No, we have to pay more.
Oh, then you've been here 1,000 years. So this man's telling us what he's working on or something.
The main thing I'm working on is my life in business and the fact that I'm not very good at accepting money and making it. I've years had problems with that, and now I'm in a position where I can both.
Can you describe more accurately and clearly your difficulties that you're discussing?
It's a large and long problem, but if I were to describe it as shortly as possible, I would say that I had shame towards money.
You have changed.
Shame.
Shame towards. Tell us in more detail about your shame.
I think growing up, particularly with my parents, there was some shame that developed in me. Seeing people who didn't have, and people who had things. We didn't have a lot, but we had enough. And I think it was instilled in me that money was somehow bad. And so I've been working on overcoming that.
Do you recall who instilled it?
In the end, it was me who made the choices.
Yeah, but you didn't start that way because we don't instill things into ourselves.
Because the people who I would choose to blame, I don't see that in them. I see that they may be created situations which my young minds absorbed from incorrectly. I don't necessarily think those situations were either black or white. They weren't. It wouldn't make every human being react the same way. But for some
Are you
reason,
defending anyone?
perhaps.
No, don't perhaps me. There's a yes and no group. Not a perhaps, maybe, woulda, coulda, shoulda, mighta.
I don't know if I'm defending anyone.
You don't know. Does that mean no or yes?
No.
No what?
No, I'm not defending.
No, sir! Don't you go to those Tom Cruise movies? Yes, sir. No, sir. I think we have to look at when we do anything, some living creature is the recipient of what we're doing. And if that person is less adult than we are, they accept what they hear as true. If it comes from an authority source, they say it is true, and they try their best to accept it, act on it, and become it. So, somewhere along the line, you got convinced that earning good money is a bad thing. What has changed you?
I'd say accepting the idea that it's not a bad thing. Just taking that idea in myself and saying, okay, what if it's not? Playing what if. And beginning to act as though it was okay.
Who hears sloppy work? And what do they hear? Speak up, because this is a unisex group. Seeing you're sitting next to him, what do you hear? The last sentence was full of mushy little spots. Were you here?
Yeah, I was. I'm taking a second to reconstruct the last sentence in my head. I had a question in my head as Mark was saying that whatever it is that he was saying, it was like he said that like playing as if, and I was wondering like what caused him to choose to play as if, like why does it, like why did he want to change, like why change it, like what, you know, it's that's what I don't understand. Like, what is the motive for change? Why does he want to, like? Why does he want to not think money is a bad thing? It's like, well, what's
why doesn't he want to think that money is a good thing or a bad thing? See, I heard him saying that it doesn't have to be a bad thing. He's thinking about it. You cannot work at something unless you have taken a stance. That stance can change next week. But if we're working on changing something, we must at the time think that it is worth doing and actually doing it. Make sense? Tell me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the stance... This man believes that in order to... I mean, he's just defined that he has a problem with money. So he takes a stance to say why he has a problem. He's figured out that he has some shame towards it and takes a stance that he believes that it is not or can not be a bad thing. In the right hands, in the right use. It's neither good nor bad. It can be used badly or used well. It's not it doesn't have a definition of good or bad. So the stance this man would take, or really probably should take, is that it has no meaning, except it helps him in life, and he's looking to improve certain things, and that is a way in this world to do that. So he should clear aside the problems that he has in making money, which he's identified as, to some degree, he's not good at asking for it or accepting it.
I don't hear a person who has decided that there is something that needs to be worked on. I'm still hearing someone who is thinking about, is it right, is it wrong, should I, shouldn't I, in case it is, then I will. Does anybody else hear that?
Yes. It's Mark keeps going back and forth between the two sides, not really deciding, okay, I'm going with this or not. He's not. It does not sound that Mark is committed to this or that. He keeps going back and forth.
Good word. To work on something, one has to be committed. to the idea of working from that angle. If that turns out not necessary, not proper, then the stance is changed. Okay, then perhaps it needs to be worked on from this angle. Then we give it all we've got at this angle. Yes? Well, now you've put in this effort. Now, what do you think of the idea of you and money?
I still have very little opinion on it, I must say.
Okay.
It seems something that one does in life. It doesn't matter that much that I have it or not.
Okay. Where is this going to take him, Derek?
No changing from his current view on money. I guess at the outset, he presented the idea that he wanted to change or was working on it. It's obvious that that's not going to happen.
What do you think that an intelligent fellow says that it doesn't look like you're on the right track?
Well, I'd have to say, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I hear that in those words. There's a part of Mark.
Yeah, that's what he said. What do you think about what he said?
Well, while he was saying it, this person was siding completely with him, thinking, yes, that's true. This doesn't seem like, well, like you just posited a moment ago, which is if you don't take a stance, it's not going to be real work or worked upon or have a possibility of change.
Now you understand more readily why it's essential that when you pick something to work on, a goal, an aim, something to work on, you should not do it by yourself, because the mind is a maze of mirrors. When you pick out something to work on, it's essential to have something clear, very, very clear. The why must be very, very clear. Then you start putting together the how, because I don't think that you are at this point convinced that you should change your attitude. You don't sound convinced. And further on that, you don't sound convinced into what your attitude should change into. How can this succeed?
Well, I would suggest that I've already, this is something I have been working on for a while, I have already come about it from a stance, succeeded to a degree, took myself from one salary level to another, and then at some point wasn't certain whether that was the stance I wanted to continue.
What made you uncertain?
Sorry.
What made you uncertain?
It must be falling back on old habits, but a lot of it, I think, comes from the outside. From the day-to-day, as far as that being a grind upon one. My current work situation is a very negative money situation. It seems to be a company that is surviving, not unlike myself. Surviving, doing okay, making it to the next.
Is being in a situation that is defined as surviving, being okay, is that a healthy atmosphere in which to work? Is that good for your work strength?
No, because if you're surviving, if you're doing okay, then there's nothing to push you to do something else. You have to be a little hungry, I think, or want it enough to change it. That's why I'd say I plateaued. I got to a point, and then it was comfortable again. It was easy to go back to sleep on that issue.
You're stating that to get comfortable is a pretty dangerous place. I fully don't understand where the idea of I don't want, I don't desire, I'm comfortable being whatever happens. There's a general reference to a laid-back attitude, whatever that means. And I can tell as I say it that I'm not with it. I don't know how that attitude, in my description, almost seemed to like infect many people, thousands, maybe millions. Can you add to what I'm thinking of trying to say?
Well, at one point, Mark used the word believe or belief in reference to attitudes about money and so forth, and it occurs to me that when you have a belief, or when you believe something, you can believe it in one of three ways. Either your body believes it. My body believes that I can stand up. My body knows that I can stand up. My body knows that it can run down a set of stairs. That's not something that the intellect can, okay, pick the foot up, now put it forward, no. So it's not the intellect that does that, it's not the emotions that do that, it's the body. The intellect can have a belief. Let's see, it's rush hour and I have to go to the Bronx. I think it would be better to take the FDR Drive than the West Side Highway. The intellect has to decide that. The intellect has to have a belief that's acted on. And then there's other things that the emotional center acts on. The emotional center has beliefs. And it seems like for a lot of people, the idea of making money is very emotional and totally locked in with that center. And the intellectual center has no control over it. The intellectual part could say, gee, you really should make some more money because da-da-da-da-da, and you have to pay this and this and this, but the emotion doesn't really, it'll work out. So I would say that if the emotional center doesn't want that, if you don't show up to work and every day and get browbeaten by your boss and humiliated every day so that you just can't stand it anymore, and you say, I'm going to start my own business. God damn it, I don't want to feel like this anymore. until you reach that point, it's like Mark said, it doesn't really seem like an issue because the emotional center hasn't committed to believing.
I would say from listening to Mark that in reflecting on my own life that it's really difficult to do anything. At first you do something out of discipline, and then the next step is it connects in some deep way to the sense of being alive, and something that really is evolutionary for that person. Without that, it's almost impossible. I believe in the idea of work is a living form. Where it comes from, it has a certain feel, a certain sense to it, and I think you have to turn yourself over to that in some way that's of service to this realm, which in a sense is nameless. On one level, it's nameless. You can't see it, you can't smell it, it is not from here. You must say, this is a fairy tale type of situation. You get chosen. You ask to be chosen, you ask to be of service, you get something to do that needs doing. Not for you, but for, as Gil would maybe call it, the invisible. You must desperately want to live. And then something comes along if you're lucky. And until then, you do things in a way that if you reflect on your day, you were of some use somewhere. Even if it doesn't feel coherent to you. You smiled at the guy in the taxi. You did something that you can you have to specifically know what you did. Exactly. And then maybe if you're lucky, but otherwise forget it. It's totally impossible. But you practice until then. But you can feel in yourself, people often don't want to take that position of being of service, not knowing how it's going to turn out. Maybe you leave your girlfriend, maybe you have no money, maybe you have this or that, whatever. That's my experience. And I think of Mark when I've heard him tell stories of himself as a spokesperson years ago out of the church orientation where he was a spokesperson. He had that capacity to speak. That he was a theater director. That Mark knows how to do a lot of things. So he's of no use to himself at the moment. He has so much creative capacity. And somewhere that, whatever happens, when it's almost as if he has to go back to that place where he lost himself, where the road was going straight and he went off to the right. Being in the work has helped him keep that idea conscious, but he has to go and put himself out there in ways that are much different than what he's doing. And until he does that, he's just keeping the lid on the teapot. And so I wish for him to find his way to, in a sense, what you do is you just throw yourself on the ground and you say, take me and change me, for I am worthless.
That's a very powerful emotional scene that you're depicting.
Well, it's like that.
Like that.
Doesn't have to show on the outside, but it has to feel. like you're struggling to live.
Not only are people here listening to ways of work, they're also working on themselves in the same technique. Some are already working with others in the same techniques. The position is interesting because at the same time that you, for instance, are thinking about what things to work on with yourself, this is also your training to work with your student. Wherever you are, no matter what position in the world, when you hear yourself or another quotes, I don't know, it could be that indecisiveness, realize for yourself that you're on the wrong boat. Can't change that way. Nothing works that way. Your student is not going to work that way. Your dog won't learn that way. If you have a dog, he goes on the couch. Come, little dog, but you shouldn't be on the couch. Tomorrow you can't come on the couch anymore. Remember that. I remember. Tomorrow, don't come on. What are you doing? I told you yesterday you can't stay on the couch. The day after was, puppy, come. The dog is going to go completely nuts because he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know the rules. Now he's just doing whatever occurs to him and not knowing what you're going to respond to it. The training is lost, gone, kaput. Before we decide to do anything, I'm going to talk to my wife in a more gentle, caring fashion. Okay, that's a task. You've got to be convinced, really convinced, that this is the right way for you to go. If you're not sure, then we would say, for 2 weeks, I'm going to talk to her considerately, this, and that. And at the end of 2 weeks, if I don't think I should, I'm going to continue to scream at her or whatever. But when you're going from A to B, be sure that you are definitely committed to go from A to B. And to you, in your emotional center, it has to be very, very important, or else it won't happen. We're creatures who get the energy to do something from the emotional center. The intelligence has no strength whatsoever. It's like the scales. Well, it's a little too much here, a little more there, this, but well, maybe it doesn't ever do anything. Actions come from the emotional center. To change anything, to achieve anything, we must experience really wanting it.
Could I ask what the chair's opinion is of whether it's possible to force yourself to want something?
Force yourself to want something. There's a nice, intelligent word for it, something like a dichotomy or a... No. You can do this. If I really wanted to go from here to Macy's, what would I do? I'm not sure I want to go to Macy's, but if I did, what should I do? Then, as a piece of work, I'm going to definitely go from here to Macy's. Even if I don't want to go, I'm going. Then that becomes a piece of work. I can't say I have forced myself to want to go to Macy's. I have forced myself to go to Macy's.
To act as if you
To
wanted
act
go.
as if, yes. That's the same thing somebody would do if they really wanted to go to Macy's. I don't, but I will do it anyway. So when you're faced with these things that you want to clear up in yourself and evolve within yourself without a very, very definite emotional stance, which can change next month. But there has to be an emotional stance that says, I want to do this, I want to understand this, I want to go in that direction. And the moment one says, well, I'm not sure if I do, the game is over. It's like a football player, if he says, I'm not sure if I want to win. Take your money back. That game isn't going to happen. Respond. What did you hear? What am I clarifying? What am I messing up?
Well, I had several thoughts while speaking. One, my state shifted off. Something that Mark noticed and we thought he'd bring up was that being asked the direct question, what are you working on, created in him this almost vacuum of a need to find something. And what he chose, interestingly enough, is what he thinks he needs to work on, as opposed to what he probably is working on.
Okay. When faced with coming up and saying, I'm not working on anything, this is what I'm working on, when actually you aren't.
What he considers work is just moment to moment, day to day. If he's with the other person, trying to listen to them as closely as he can, trying to get out of this situation that is happening right now, what needs to occur. Whether it be meeting someone at the bank and maybe changing their day a little bit by the way he speaks to them, and give them a little energy, make them feel a little better, and get what he needs. Wherever he goes in his day, because right now it is of a more mundane nature. It's just everyday life. But
The
everyday
work
life,
is not everyday life.
but
It's like if you wish to be a very strong man. Everyday life should have a nice breakfast, should have a nice lunch, you should rest enough. All these are the backgrounds for a man who wants to become a strong man. But if you really wish to be a man who becomes a strong man, you've got to work out very diligently with very strong weights and constantly be making it heavier. You understand that? So the idea of improving someone's life, yes. I can't say that that's working on a project. That's conscious behavior. But we started first with, what are you working on at present? And I think you danced around and came up with something that I don't know if you're really working on it as a piece of work with passion for a time, for a result.
it's not an aim. It's not an aim I've taken. Definitely not.
I like the example of a strongman training. Of course, there's the general lifestyle. Must lead a healthy life. All the strongmen that I've ever studied about, they have programs, they have techniques, they keep very, very clear books. Today, October the 19th, I lifted 400 pounds once, 410 pounds once, went back, I could not lift the 400. Those are really what they're doing. I'm going to stay with this method for 2 or 3 weeks, then I'm going to go up 2 pounds in each exercise. Then there's the entry. And these guys have, and women of course, these people have entries like this that go back for months and months through an entire career. So if they say, well, this is what I did then at the beginning. Within 2 years, I started warming up with this, succeeding with that, and there's a very, very clear outline that they can pass on to their students or to posterity or whatever. But it's got to be very, very clear what you want. Now, I think that you have a very, very good point in the fact that you have a difficulty with money. I don't know how important that is to you. If it's not so important to you, I don't know. I don't know whether it's worth taking on as an effort. You gave us an example that you went from a certain job paying a certain amount to another job that pays more. The listener is forced to ask, did you demand this from yourself? Did you demand this from others? What was your, or was this just a piece of luck?
No, I absolutely demanded it. It was in the same job.
Mm-hmm.
I went in and said, I want you to make me this position, and this is what I want to make. And then the second raise, I said, I'm taking this raise. And I wrote the check and did it.
Okay.
So,
Why did you do this?
Why?
Yeah.
Because I knew that in my life right now, I need more money than I'm making.
Okay.
And I knew that I wasn't taking as much as I should take,
But
I took more than I was emotionally comfortable.
this requires on your part, because you're a young man, you're going to be in the employment working scene for many, many years. I strongly suggest you try as hard as you can to grab me or grab somebody and work on this very, very diligently, because you're looking at an issue that may very well come out costing you many, many, many thousands of dollars. Many. And with that include the possibility for your family, your children if you have any, a mate if you have, whatever you have. This is the United States of America, 2010, and the coin of the realm is money. And a lot of people have issues with money. Who's the Gurdjieff guy that wrote a lot about money?
Needleman.
Jacob Needleman. Pick up something by him. He is a man who gave much work, much thought to the idea of money. While you're at it, examine why it is that to you this doesn't seem such an important thing. To others it is. To some it's less important than what you think. Why are you where you are?
And for me, it's always been more interesting to do the thing than to be paid there is an enjoyment in figuring something out and doing, not necessarily an enjoyment in cashing the check. That's great, and maybe it gives you, often, it gives you the ability to go on and then do that next thing. So that's where it's become a necessary reality for me. You need to.
I suggest that you are very, very enmeshed in this situation, and you should really examine it and work on it. And work on it. Jacob Needleman, in his writings, he brought to mind that the idea that money is not just a green piece of paper floating around that you can buy things with. It's a symbol, a deep-seated symbol. It is no different than the things that other civilizations used to trade. That was as important as this is now, or maybe more important. In this world, the world that we know, your position closes a lot of doors and opens some, I guess, but it closes a lot of doors. I would suggest you give this thing a good, major piece of your thinking and working for at least the following 2 years at least. It's a major, major piece of work which will reflect in your life very strongly for the rest of your days. What do you think, John?
Well, I always struggled with money myself and have very similar perception, belief system as Mark. Until I came to this work. And also, now I have a different concept about money. I think money, to me, is my higher self energy. That means that when I don't have work, I feel very diminished. I don't feel wanted. My self-esteem is an issue. And I feel like I have no purpose. I'm not doing any service to myself, to others. And when I have a lot of work, then I feel very confident. I think I'm learning and I'm helping others. So the money has very different concept for me now. And I have a daughter who's 20 years old, and the college is $60,000 a year. I mean, this is just reality. And one has to live, and one goes to doctors, after a certain age, and it is a great deal of money. It takes the exchange to live this life. So my concept of money is very different now than when I was younger. And also, I think a lot about how I can do better work so I can have more income. So it's a big part of my being, how to do more work in a more effective way. So that's what I'm thinking.
Thank you, thank you. And from Mark, I get the idea that it isn't just a matter of I don't need it or I can invent a way to get around it. But the original idea that you opened with was there's some sort of shame. That's a powerful word, man. Especially in this country at this time. Very, very few people ever use the idea of shame. Very strong. The idea of shame is an extremely powerful emotion. I'm sorry you caught me. That's a different story. Maybe I shouldn't have done it, but to say I am ashamed or that event fills me with shame, it's a very, very powerful saying. And you're going to need the equivalent of the power of that emotion to wrestle with your ideas on the subject. Because it is one of the most powerful subjects that we can ever talk about. It shapes people's lives. I would say that in many ways it's offhand as powerful and as important as the genetic structure of your blood system. Some people have been brought up to feel that their fathers and mothers will take care of everything. They can do anything. Dad will take care of it. Some people have been brought up, my dad doesn't have a dime. If I want to have a bowl of soup, I got to earn it. So we're dealing with one of the most powerful. Jones said it's a life force. And I think the Needleman goes along with that idea very strongly. It's a life force. It has the power to immediately affect an emotion. It has the power to crush a dream. When a composer writes a piece of music, he will never hear this music in his life until from somewhere comes the capacity to be able to hire the musicians to play it. That's a drag to write a piece of music and never ever hear it. But where are you going to get 60 musicians to play it? That sort of thing. I definitely believe that the idea of money is as strong as the idea of sex. I think maybe in time some researcher may put the idea of the emotional center, the physical center, the sexual center, and the money center. Because money it's a representative of power. Yes, I want to make a great movie. Well, for a great movie, I need great camera. I know it has been done with a lousy camera too. But to make a great movie, you need a couple of great cameras. And that's going to cost. And you need talented men to work that camera. That's going to cost. Etc., etc., etc. And maybe your vision of a movie, maybe it's the best movie ever made. But there's every good possibility it's going to cost millions for you to see your movie, to make it. Are you a man who can raise these millions? Is your movie that important to you that you will find a way to go out and raise $50 million or whatever it costs? If you do not believe that you will go out and exert whatever power it is to come up with the money to make that movie, then I wonder if I should be in your movie. You don't think it's such a fantastic movie. I mean, you think it's a fantastic movie in conversation, but I don't know if you're going to go out and raise the money. Why should I tie up with you? Why should anybody tie up with you? I like to repeat the story of Leonardo and the David. That Leonardo had a vision to make the David, as if to say the David in its pre-nascent time longed to become a reality and filled this man's idea. He filled his mind with this idea. I don't know how many years it took Leonardo to get the stone to make the David. But easily it was like in another part of the world. He had to wait whatever, a year or more, to get on the boat to go to that part of the world. To examine all the stone and see, yes, that's the stone that I want to work with. And some king is sitting there saying, well, not in my country, you're not going to take away the stone. Leonardo said, well, I will buy the stone. How are you going to get out of here? Well, we'll drag... No. You're going to have to build a road if you want to drag this thing out. So Leonardo spent approximately 10 years in negotiating with the powers that be of where the rock was, building a road, building a community of workers to spend a few years to build this road to get the stone out. So this stone took many years and many efforts politically, artistically, talking to people, and finally you and I go see the David. But that's what it takes to create a David, not just the vision of yourself and the chisel. Can you speak to the leader of a foreign nation and convince him to let you screw around in his country to take something out, put people to work, and then deliver? Because he did. So I guess if I get the whiff as an actor that you are willing to do that with this movie, and you can do it, then hey, I want to be on board because this looks like a winner.
I think today we're set up differently. So today there's like it's a big crew of people that work together, rather like probably for Leonardo's time too. There's producers that do this job. I mean, there's the talent. I guess the talent has to, in small projects before, and then medium-sized projects, maybe a little larger projects, demonstrate the talent's talent and his ability to deliver what it is that he claims that he wants to deliver, wants and can deliver. And then it has to do with what following or what, I don't know, how many people around him admire and appreciate the work that he does. That will determine how much power he's gained and if that project is going to be something that he can do or not.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. Process.
That's why at this point, Quentin Tarantino was able to say, hello, listen, I want $20 million to do this. You got it. Because the people that have that kind of money know if you sink money into Quentin Tarantino, you're going to see a profit. He is already a proven subject, yeah.
I'd like to say that I think Gil's story about Leonardo wanting to build the sculpture of the David, that it wasn't so much that Leonardo wanted to build it as much as that Leonardo knew that it had to be built.
Yes, the David insists upon being built and chose to inhabit Leonardo to get as a mother.
Right, because Leonardo himself no one person would have the capacity to do all those things, and it goes back to what Pam was saying before about the things that have to be larger than you. And that's how you put yourself in service of the goals that you have. So the things that we want to accomplish really are things that are larger than ourselves, and that gives us the capacity to do things that we wouldn't ordinarily be able to do. And Gil is fond of quoting the entertainer Bobby Short, who used to say, "You own the room, or the room owns you." So when you're when you're a performer, either you have command of the stage and you have command of the room and the command of the audience, or they run you. And if they run you, it's bad news.
And rightfully so.
And rightfully so, exactly.
Because a guy like Bobby Short, as audience, you sat there, you knew that he was going to do a great show.
And so going back to the idea of money, it's not even... I think the relationship is the same thing. It's like, are you in money's service, or is money in your service? And if you can change that idea of thinking, no, that money has to be in my service because there's things I have to do. And if I think that's an attitude that has helped me a lot, because I think I like Mark and like many people have struggled with what my attitudes were towards money and things ideas I inherited from my parents that I thought I had to overcome. And when we think about things that we may still be struggling with from our childhood, ideas that were instilled in us by parents, by school teachers, by policemen, by whoever, it's being in work means that you can have a much broader idea of things that to people who aren't in work, they're just very prosaic things. Sex is sex. Money is money. Well, if you're, a tantric yoga practitioner, sex isn't sex. Sex is much more than just the regular person's sex. If you are experiencing money as a part of your spiritual growth and your spiritual entity, then it's not just regular money. It's something that's in service of something higher. It's not the same as for other people.
And on that note, I find that responsibility also goes in that under the service. Because I didn't bring up the child not be able to give the right education or not take care of her properly. And that is my responsibility as a mom. And so it teaches me how to really take care of it. Also gives me a freedom at the same time.
Well, going back to Mark, and echoing what Pamela said, I would like to ask Mark, what would your day-to-day life will be like if you didn't have any shame about money? Because I think it is the practice of acting as if or acting differently that represents the work that Gil was talking about. And to think about ways to do it is not the same thing as to practice it. So, for instance, will Mark be acting differently towards his family or towards his partner or towards his friends if he had no shame about money? How would that change his actions on a day-to-day basis? I think that's where he could learn more about how his belief system about money is conditioning his actions now, and find ways to operate against that set of beliefs.
Yeah. This is a piece of work, maybe. Okay, at this point you're making $500 a week. Take on a name that in 9 months from now you're going to be making $750 a week. To get to that spot, you're going to have to do a lot of something. And we hope, between you and myself or whoever we hope that that is going to take you to a more developed spiritual spot than you're in now. We hope. What would you have to do to increase your salary 50% salary?
I'd like to say something because, like, as Gil spoke now of deciding that one wants to increase one's salary, and how do you go from 500 to 750 within, say, 9 months, whatever it was. And all of a sudden, I don't know why, but I thought of what Pamela was speaking earlier. And then it's all in a millisecond. I thought about me and how I had lots of problems with my attitude towards money.
I think I remember.
And there are many ways to and Gil presented before, there's like people work differently. There's different ways to work on a problem, even if the title of the problem is the same title. Different people will work on their problems with money in a different way. And say the solution that I put together, or that was put together for me, that was presented for me, that was right for me, is not necessarily on putting a number in front of me and saying, within a year I want to be making this. Rather, it was removing, like, my attitude towards money was an obstacle. And I changed my attitude towards money. At this point, I can't really recall how is it. I know that all the years that I thought money was a bad thing and that people with money were nasty, were bad, and that people without money were better. At the same time, I had a part in me that really wanted money and thought money was an amazing thing. There was always these two things coexisting. But the part that thought it was a bad thing was a stronger part of me. And I think it was more about giving that other part more life. It was all of a sudden feeling like that part of me that wants things, that wants to buy things and wants to go places, is not a bad part of me. It's just another part of me. And going to this nice restaurant and having this nice meal was not a bad thing, and that I was deserving of it. It was okay. It was like I didn't do anything bad, that there's nothing wrong with it. And so it's like it was like a process of feeling worthy of having that in my life. Once that was changed and I felt worthy, all of a sudden there were these things happening in my life that brought money into my life. I didn't have to decide that I need this much more money. This much more money came into my life. When I decided when I was helped to come to the decision that I'm worthy of having my own apartment when I turned 40. And I was freaking out. How will I come up with the rent? Once I took the decision that I will have this apartment for myself, the week after, I had the money to pay the rent. Because it just happened, but because I committed to that decision of, I want this and I'm worthy of this and I can do this, and I trust that bigger thing that it will happen. And it did. And I had to work for it, of course. There was a price. I had to work harder for it. But I had the money to pay the rent. And so it wasn't like, it was a more, I don't know, more creative. I don't know what to call it, but it wasn't like I didn't have to write a number down. It was, I don't know.
A different way of stating the aim.
Yeah.
It occurs to me that money is a means, or it is an altar, and depending on how you look at it, it can do different things. When money is a means to get something else, whether it's a bowl of soup, whether it's confidence, whether it's self-esteem or value on the work that you do, it no longer is this static thing that can breed complacence. When money is something that you're given and you hold it, in a different regard, when it's only a reward and it sits there as such and it's idolized for that, I think it becomes dirty. Earlier, Mark said, "This was the money I want to take," and I found it interesting that you said "take" and not "make," and the difference, minor, subtle difference in earning it as a means for something else as opposed to taking and having and no destiny for it afterwards. I work in a very strange industry called advertising, and in that industry we're often asked to do projects we don't like, and I'm happy that you brought up Leonardo, because this is an analogy I use with a lot of the people I work with who are asked to do creative jobs. And we'll have a client come one day and that client will say, "This absolutely needs to be red," and everyone in the office knows blue is the answer, and we'll present blue, and they'll say, "No, it needs to be red," and we'll come back and we'll work on it and we'll work on it, and eventually, let them eat cake, it's going to have to be what they want, because this money is a means for us to do something else. And so much like Leonardo, I'm sure the Medici family, which was his patron, many times had a mansion, and they said, we have this room, and this room needs a fresco, and we want it to look like this, and this is what it's going to be. And he said, well, I want to make the David, so you can have that fresco this way. I'm not going to put up that fight. I'll take that money as a means for me to make what I want with it.
He's talking about the idea of money is the root of all evil. And anybody that's just examined it a little bit has read that it's the love of money or the adoration of money that's the difficulty. Money itself, sitting there, a dollar bill sitting there by itself, it doesn't do anything. It sits there. But when you take it, it gives you $1 worth of power. Now you can go out and buy a donut or whatever. You can do something with that dollar. So then the issue becomes, what will you do with the money? Which is a great question to ask anybody, including yourself. If somebody came along tomorrow and said, here's $5 million, do with it what you want, what would you do? Each one of us would do something different. What would we do? And to reach that point is a good piece of work, because you have to make a lot of money to be able to have that decision on your mind. You could give it to a charity. You could do a lot of things. Which will you do? But issues like a sense of shame on money, a sense of guilt, a sense that with the money you'll solve all the difficult, all those are insanities. So when we clear all the insanities, what's the final remaining reality of money? But we have to clear the air first, and we can't have a judgment on it. Well, I'm bad if I make $1 million. Yeah, but if I make $1 million, I could give, I could do this or that with it. Sue said that an entity in the invisible decides to come and inhabit us. The same way that we were entities previous to our birth, and we decided to be born. Big decision. Why? And we knew the why that drove us towards being born. And in the shock of birth, we lost that. We decided why. We decided to select the people that are going to be our parents. We'd selected the location, the time. A lot of, seems mundane to call it thinking, but a lot of thinking went into this, because the being knew very, very clearly what it had to come into this particular window of reality to do. It came here, and with the shock of birth, and usually the manifest qualities of the people around, the politics, the parents, all of it, it has completely forgotten why it came. And the vast majority of people, I assure you, won't even believe that a baby has selected to come for a reason. But the work we're doing takes it very, very strongly, extremely strongly. What did you come here to do? I don't know. Okay, then if we work enough, can we revitalize and awaken that part in ourselves which will know? And that sets us on a track towards getting the evolution out of this existence that we need, knowing what we came here to do. Then comes, will we do it? Then, all the way down the line, having done it, now we embark upon another existence at some time, having gained this piece of knowledge, that it was essential to gain it, because if we have not gained it, cannot go further. But we came to this reality to gain something in our own personal evolution. The vast majority of people are born and die without even thinking about it. But whether we think about it or not, there are X amount of years to do this. Mr. Gurdjieff always mentioned the merciless hieropas. The most I could decode was hiero, meaning horas, H-O-R-A in the Latin, pass, the passing of hours, the merciless passing of hours, and I think that's a pretty decent jumping off point. That there's no dealing with this no matter how rich you are, whatever you can muster up, it is not enough to buy a day of time or an hour of time. Cannot be bought. So all of us have, again, Mr. Gurdjieff always mentioned that there was a string of a certain length, that's your life. Mine may be shorter or longer, but everyone has this little string, and you cannot go past the end of your leash. So already something within us has said, okay, to something, let's go here because here this is a valid assumption, a valid question. This exists, this question exists here, and we're here. Now, as always, what are we going to do? And how are we going to do it? For Mark, we thank you so much. I thank you so much for tonight. Beautiful point you brought up. To go further, to what other areas of your life is this chain attached to?
I think it's important with these pieces of work that one takes them on as a study. That I advise Mark to do that, where you keep a notebook. You start out, you ask yourself a series of questions, you write the answers, you observe yourself in terms of this issue over a year. Maybe not change you may decide to change something, but to really see, in a sense, what this obstacle is made out of. Because it seems like it's an obstacle. So, and then to move, it's like moving a rock. You have to put effort, physical force, into moving the rock. The work, in a sense, is quite simple, in the sense that I think it's based on doing, and a very, as Gil was saying earlier, to have a clear mind and to set clear goals. And denial seems to have people just skirt around that very issue. And once you move out of that blindness, then you just start. So I highly advise that type of study in this area of literally observation, and very important to write it down. And at the end of a period of time designated, you see where you are.
Must be. Yes.
It sounds so simple, but it's rarely done.
And the devil is in the details. Dr. Freud wrote a great piece called, I think it was The Wolf Man, I'm not sure, or has it been because I've been thinking about the Wolf Man lately, I don't know.
Freud wrote The Wolf Man?
He didn't, did he? He didn't. He wanted to write The Wolf Man. Did you know that though a man be pure of heart and say his prayers by night, he may still become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the moon burns bright? Maria Ospensky said that in a picture called The Wolf Man. Yeah, I've only seen it maybe 30, 40, 50 times. Anyway, it had to do, Freud's writing was something to do with somebody's problem. And he took on this patient, and he worked with this patient, and he kept very, very meticulous notes for at least a couple of years. That piece of work has been read by thousands of practitioners, thousands of students, and many psychoanalysts in training and other psychoanalysts have read it, disputed it, researched it, added more ideas to it. This is one of the cornerstones of psychoanalytic psychotherapy. Do that with his. There's no drinking here. Unless it's Jack Daniels, in which case I'll meet you in the back room. So when you do this piece of work and you write down all the detail, the main student with it is you. Because the beginning steps are written. A month later, 6 months later, all these steps, all these efforts, what succeeded, what failed, what had promised. This is your journal of your building your own edifice within yourself. And once that's written, someone else can read that this year or 10 years, for 50 years from now, and say, it seems to me that because of this, there was that, but that depended not so much upon this, but depended upon it. Another thesis. Essential to take a piece of work and do it like a piece of work worthy of ourselves. Not just a dopey chore that you talk about once a month or you never talk about it again. What do you think?
I think again you point to the fact that work is a practice, and so as any kind of practice, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. As an aim or a goal, it's something that becomes the more richer as we try to record as many details of work done on a specific area. So as you were saying, in that particular case, abundant notes, a lot of thinking went into it, a lot of effort went into it, and focus went into it. Maintaining the attention on a specific aim that one wants to reach is the key.
This last period since we met the last time, I've been struggling with my Kali system, difficulties beyond words. I had the good fortune that when I began it, I said consciously again and again and again, told my teachers, I am here, my main goal is not to quit. Because I know that I'm going to say to myself, I can't get this, I got no talent, I quit, okay. My main effort is not to quit. Please help me not to quit. And they said, yeah, well. I never said I want to quit. But did I think it? I can't get this, I can't get it, I can't do it. And just maybe a week ago, my wrist would hurt. I took the stick and I went this way, and then I just did that. And that was it. I mean, just do this, and then turn it so that this side is up, and do that, and the same part of the stick hits. I can't believe it. And I said to myself, I made a breakthrough. Yes, I know I've got it, and now I know I'm going to be good. I know I'm going to be good because I got it now. It's like that. Then that immediately brought me, well, does this arm have to be straight? Of course it's got to be straight. No, it's got to be straight. And like that, Johnny says, you take a piece and you write it. And then 6 months later, you go back and say, the idea that I put into writing December 1st Look, in July it was there. I didn't magnify it, but I already had the idea. And what I did December 1st was take the July idea and install it. That's the way we learn. That's the way we teach each other. That's progress. Without that, it's just bouncing around. Yeah, I should do this, I shouldn't do that, but I feel hungry today and I can't do it, and my back hurts. No, that's not work. Why do you want to do what you want to do? How hard are you willing to try? How sincere are you? And where's it going to take you? That's the beauty of it. You don't know where it's going to take you. You don't know when it's going to take you. But at some point, eureka, it's got you. Now it's easy. What was impossible is now easy. It's got shape. You can do this anywhere. Look at that. The wrist doesn't hurt. The wrist at the right angle. Now, do you want this elbow to be that away from your body, all naked? No. It's got to be kept close to the body. So you don't do this. No, you do this here. To get here, now you have to turn your body. You mean lean your body? Yes, because when you lean your body, you have not changed your feet, but you've gained 3 feet of space. Oh, that's it? Yes. And like that, suddenly you know that you're on the boat. And that's all it takes, being on the boat. Thank you. Good to see you.
Same here.
Just wanted to say, in terms of in the realm of music, having had Count Chapin among us, and having had him be part of the Avant Tango group, in this kind of perseverance that Pablo had with that, they performed at the Rose Center, at Lincoln Center, and it was totally magnificent.
Totally?
Magnificent.
Ah, good.
And I just, went with Terry. This is Tom Chapin's wife. And we just felt the sense of his presence. And like that space so enhances a musician's capability. And there was that moment, and I felt Thomas was there with them. So I just wanted to say it here in this circle.
I think it helps us to bear in mind that we are never dealing with straight pieces of string or wood. Everything we deal with has a curve and a rejoining. They're all circles. And they join again and again. They go out, they take in another tangent. Because the circles that have come to fruition here over the last 30 years for me and John, it's amazing, but they all made sense. They all came back somehow. Spoke to David Glass a few weeks ago. Your issue tonight that you presented, the money, that isn't just a piece of string and it's done, or for you to work with yourself on it. This will come again and again to everyone here who included themselves in your struggle. Everyone that I've ever met has some sort of struggle with money. And now, whenever we come to our struggles with it, we may even call you and find out how you're battling with yours to help us battle with ours. But it's a string, it's a piece. It will not go away. Tom's name will come up in this room for at least as long as Pam and I are alive, or more. But we don't forget those pieces. In fact, there's a tree on my front, in front of my house. That's Tom Chapin's tree. It's a weeping willow, and it's 3 years old now. And it's taking some shape. They take a long time to grow. Thomas's is over there. Joe Caputo's is over here. And there's Jones back there, which she is partly in with Ida Craft. Sue's father is there. Anyway, does anyone else wish to add anything? Change the subject, add to a child's subject. Tell a dirty joke. You're smiling like you know one. You don't know one?
No.
Shame on you. Everyone knows the dirty joke. I used to know one. I forgot the ending. So,
Snacks.
the time has come, the walrus said, to speak many things.
Of sealing wax and sailing ships and sealing wax and cabbages and kings.
Wait a minute. Neither more we have. 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 Neither more we have.